Welcome back to Hustle to Holdings, where we explore how people turn hustle into long term ownership. Today's guest started in the short term rental space, mastering individual properties and learning the ropes of operations, management, and guest experience. Over time, he leveled up to boutique hotel investing, scaling their portfolio, implementing systems, and participating in commercial opportunities with larger potential upside. In this episode, we're diving into the mindset, lessons, and strategy shifts that happen when moving from single properties to scaled hospitality ownership. Jordan, welcome to Hustle to Holdings. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me. This will be fun.
Oh, of course, I'm just so excited to learn about your story because I'm starting off right with the single properties and investing in that. But I have found the importance of moving and scaling into commercial. But before we dive into that, tell me a little bit about what you did before real estate investing.
Yeah, so I started out, I went to college for engineering. Thought I was going to get, just an engineering degree. I was going to just go be an engineer, kind of have like the pretty standard 9 to 5 job. And then somewhere along the way, I decided to join the military. So I uh, graduated with an engineering degree, joined the Air Force, which turned into me going into the Space Force. And then that's when I started getting into real estate investing. I kind of started just buy and hold properties, long-term rentals, and then kind of got into the short-term rental space, which kind of led me to where I'm at now. So yeah, the true origin story is engineering, and the military somehow led me to real estate.
So thank you for your service. That's number one. That's really cool. I mean, if you're joining the military, you definitely are taking risks, right? So you're not new to that. But how did you, I guess, get the real estate bug? Was there any books that you listened to? Maybe a friend got you involved?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when I was taking engineering, I always kind of had this business mindset kind of in the back of my mind. So I started taking some business classes,
Mm.
just kind of on the side. Thought maybe I'd get a business minor, but if not, like I'm already at school, I might as well just like take some classes. So I took this personal financial class, and one of the books that was like a required reading was Rich Dad Poor Dad, and
Oh.
that's really like what got me into it. I think just like learning that in that book, they push real estate pretty hard. And I know it's like a lot how a lot of people tend to get into real estate as well is kind of through that book and through some of those other books. So that was probably the one thing that drew me that direction. And then I also really liked that real estate is somewhat approachable when you're young, when you're in the military, and when you're just getting started. And what
Mm.
I mean by that is when you're in the military, you have the VA loan. So it's like, oh, I can buy a home for no money out of pocket. Really easy to do, right? I don't need any money to actually get into a property. And then like it's kind of part of business, but everyone's buying real estate. And so it's just a more approachable sense of getting into the real estate and business side of things.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And so out of all the strategies that they advertise to you when you learn about the business, why did you start with buy and hold?
I really wanted long-term wealth. Like cash
Okay.
flow wasn't super important to me.
Yeah.
And then I'm in a market. I'm in Colorado Springs, so it tends to be like fairly pricey. And so not a whole lot of people were getting cash flow anyway. So I was like, well, I don't really need that right now. I have a job. I'm young in my career, but I love the long-term appreciation that you get from properties a lot of times. And so I think that's what really drew me just to this buy and hold. It was like, I don't want more work. I don't want to go flip and create a bunch of
Right.
money and try to do that type of thing. I was like, I just slow and steady as I kind of figure out my own career.
Nice. And how did that transition into short-term rentals?
Yeah. So along the way, I realized I wanted to be surrounded with people that were doing what I was doing. So I got a chance to meet up with some local real estate investors. And as I started talking to them, they started getting into short-term rentals, and they were getting cash flow as well as appreciation. And I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. They kind of seems like a total pain in the butt, but like I'm willing to try it. And through talking to them, they're like, it's not that hard. You can systematize a lot of it. Once you figure it out, you kind of can get you can get like pretty good at it, and not it's not like as much of a headache. And at the time, I was also having a pretty rough time with a tenant, one of the
Mm.
long-term tenants that I placed in one of our homes. And so I was like, okay, I might as well give this short-term rental thing a try. So we converted a garage in the backyard of our house. So it was like, turned it into a little cottage. And through that, we're like, that's a perfect short-term rental. And so we started renting that out short term and just started to see the immediate benefits of it. Like it was just completely covering our mortgage. And so the cash flow is really good for this small unit where we would have, we were probably getting two, three, four times as much per month than we would have gotten from a long-term rental perspective. So that's kind of like, that was our introduction into it. Just some friends that were doing it and they're like, you got to do this. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a try.
So wait, so the first short-term rental that you had, it was like a garage space?
It was a former garage
Okay.
that we connected to our house plumbing, our house electrical, and then we
Oh.
converted it into a studio cottage. It was only about 320 square feet, so it was pretty small.
And why was it so popular? Were you guys centrally located around anything that was major, like a major attraction?
We're in downtown Colorado Springs. So
Okay.
that like that cottage was kind of in the old Colorado City area, which is kind
Mm.
of just this older downtown area. And it's kind of on the west side of Colorado Springs. So yeah, I think the location was good. But we just see a bunch of natural demand. Colorado Springs is a tourist town in the summertime. So, we were just getting a lot of that tourism and people coming to visit ours. And at the same time, Airbnb was just kind of popping off. And so there was just a lot of demand, especially kind of in after around the COVID timeframe when, you know, travel to, natural locations, whether it be like state parks or national parks. So I think that was fueling a lot of the people coming in.
And when did you realize that you wanted to scale?
Scale is tough. I don't know if I would say at that moment I wanted to scale. I knew that we wanted to have more short-term rentals. There
Okay.
was some like changing regulations, things were getting harder, and so as short-term rentals were getting more difficult to find and to build in Colorado Springs, it creates a natural moat. And whenever you have a
Mhm.
moat in business, it means that the people that are inside that moat that have kind of captured that money that's going to continue to go up, but then it's going to keep other competitors from coming in. So it keeps supply constrained while demand at least will stay consistent or rise. And so I think that forced us to first off just want to buy more short-term rentals. We bought a few more, continued that strategy for a while. But at some point, it became difficult to continue to do short-term rentals with specifically where interest rates went, and then the price of houses not really falling in our area. So the numbers stopped making sense at some point. And so then we were like, okay, what do we do next?
And when did that turn into hotel? Like, what mindset shift did you have that it was like, you know what? Let me buy a hotel instead.
Yeah, once I left the military, so I left the military a few years back, and when I did that, I left with the intent to go into real estate, and so I pursued real estate full time. I did a little bit of agent work, and then some of my friends, the same ones that got me into the short term rentals at first, they started a property management company for short term rental owners. So they were managing maybe 100, 120 at the time. And they're like, hey, do you want to run operations for us? I was like, sounds like a great opportunity to kind of learn the ins and outs of a business, definitely like a startup business. And so, we were kind of building as we're flying the plane, so
Mhm.
to speak. And through that, it was super challenging. And it also gave me an opportunity to understand why hotels operate the way they do and what kind of distinguishes hotels from short-term rentals. And I think it was through kind of that discovery process of how do you run these short-term rentals and then what are the added benefits that hotels and specifically boutique hotels have that really drove me to say, I think I like hospitality. I just don't think I like short-term rentals at a large scale. And so that pivoted
Mm.
me to, okay, what if I bought a hotel where I can create a brand story, where I can have guests all under one roof, where I can have one central team running that. So that's kind of where my mind went. And this was through just a lot of listening to podcasts and hearing how other short term rental operators, even a couple years ago, were starting to look into these small boutique hotels.
And tell me about then your first boutique hotel deal.
Yeah, so we were looking at, we started looking, a business partner who was also in the short term rental side of things. We started looking back in February of 24. And by like April, May, we had found one out in Durango, Colorado. It was a 25 unit exterior entry room style, so kind of
Mhm.
motel style, kind of that old classic roadside motel
Okay.
kind of build. And it was in a great location. We hadn't really been to Durango or spent much time there, but we knew it was kind of outdoor focused. It felt true to who we were and what we were trying to build. And so that was the first hotel we purchased. We were under contract for probably about 70, 80 days. We're able to kind of close relatively quickly. Used an SBA loan to close on the property, and then did a fairly quick renovation. The renovations took about maybe 4 or 5 months. And then we kinda kept it open along that time frame. We'd do some rooms, and then we'd close off more rooms, and we'd open up the other ones. And so by basically the springtime, which is our spring is the start of our busy season, we were back open and live. And so that was our first hotel.
Nice. Okay, so let's talk numbers. So how much did you purchase it for? And you said you got an SBA loan. So how much down did you need for that hotel?
Yeah. So we purchased it for 2.45
Nice.
million, um, which was a fair price. I wouldn't say we got a killer deal on it.
But for
But
25 doors, that's not bad. It depends on the market though.
yeah, it does, it does. I would say, like, all that to say, I don't think we got, like, a killer deal. Some people are
Mm.
looking for that home run deal where they're purchasing it, at a quarter of what it should be purchased at, and it's like, you can try to find those, but we were just looking for a solid asset. So this one had really good bones, just needed some cosmetic updates. So yeah, we purchased for 2.45. We ended up putting about 500K into it. And then in terms of down payment, we stacked some different financing. So we had the SBA that came in for about 82% of the loan. And then we had seller financing for another 8% of the loan. And
Nice.
then we really only had to come in with 10% down on that. You could call it 3 million.
Okay, so you came with 10% down, but you did seller finance a portion. So that's already a good deal because creative deals are always the best to find. Did you raise any money for the down payment? Or was it just you and your partner?
So it was me and my partner, and then we brought in a third, kind of more silent partner. He's not as involved in the day to day, and so we all split that 10% down between the three of us. We really, because it was our first deal, we didn't.
Yeah,
We were a little bit worried about taking money from other people.
I
Just this
understand.
overall concern that, like, what if our assumptions are incorrect? What if we don't really know what we're doing? And so we just didn't really want to, and it was nice to be able to maintain control of the deal too by not having to raise the money.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because at the end of the day, when you have investors, you need to make sure that you're paying them off. So it was a good first deal to be able to control. Did it already come in with cash flow in place? Like it was already cash flowing the property?
Yeah, you could say that. Uh,
Okay.
I the debt was a lot higher, but like our first month, we didn't do any renovations. We basically kept the property as is and ran it for, I
Okay.
think, 3 or 4 months after we purchased it, and that's because we bought it in August, and August is one of our busiest months, probably our second busiest month of the year. So we didn't
Oh.
wanna just, like, shut it down. We're like, "We need to capture this revenue," and then we waited towards the end of the year. Our season stops around November, December, so we started renovations in November.
Nice. What type of renovations did you do? Did you like make anything different to be able to increase the demand?
Yeah, I would say most of the renovations were purely cosmetic. So new
Okay.
flooring, all new bathrooms. Like all the furniture inside the rooms were redone. Obviously painting inside and out. We updated the lobby to be. It was kind of stale before. It didn't really have like a hangout space. We added like couches and games, and then like a little concession area. And then the one amenity we added was a hot tub. So we added this massive, um, like 8-person cedar barrel hot tub that looks really good in photos and kind of fits that mountain vibe. So that was one of the big kind of amenity additions that maybe drove up ADR. But I think in general, our ADRs are really supported by how we what I mean is we pushed ADRs through just, like, making it look very aesthetically pleasing and updated compared to how it looked before.
Nice. Nice. And then ever since, have you been investing in other hotel deals or what has been your strategy since this first deal?
Yeah, originally we didn't really want to purchase anything else.
Mm,
We really wanted to take a year or two and really confirm, like, hey, what we did at the Adventure Inn in Durango is, we our assumptions turned out correct. This was a really good deal. Let's go replicate the model. But about midway through the renovations, we had a broker that we were interfacing with before, trying to find a deal, come to us and say, "Hey, we got this deal in Manitou Springs, which is kind of in our backyard here in Colorado Springs. I think you should come take a look." And so we went and walked it, and kind of fell into this second property, where it needed a lot more work. It was much different, a lot larger, but it just seemed like such a great opportunity. And that one we did get a heck of a steal on just through the connection. And so, yeah, we ended up purchasing a second hotel. Kind of same strategy, ran it for a few months in the summertime, and then we're closed right now completely for renovations.
same SBA loan, seller financing?
Um, this one was a bit of a whirlwind. We took 100%, actually, I shouldn't say 100%, kind of similar. We took 90% seller financing on the property.
Nice.
And then but we didn't have any way to fund the renovations, and the renovation cost was about, so we purchased this one for 2.1. Renovations are about 2.3. So we didn't want to raise that much money. So what we did is we actually found a hard money lender that
Mm.
came in, paid off our seller financing, is financing the entire renovation portion. And then this summer, once we finish renovations, we will refinance into likely an SBA loan.
How did your team get into these creative deals? Like, how did you find these solutions to be able to fund these large projects?
I mean, I think a lot of it is just understanding what the seller wants,
Mhm,
and just having and building that relationship with them. But for example, like going back to the property in Durango, to get the seller to kind of agree to financing, we built a really strong relationship with him and the broker. Um, Kind of throughout the entire process. We were just consistent with them. We were open and honest with them. And, even after we first met with them, we've done this with both sellers. We've taken them out to eat or for drinks after, just to show that, hey, we're serious, and hey, let's talk about this further. And just to
mm,
kind of build that personal relationship. I think people think that a lot of times, like, it's hard to find these deals, or that you have to do something special. And I think the special thing is just treating them like people, and helping them realize that you see what they've done to the property and like the work they've put in. Like if you're purchasing from a mom and pop seller, they have so much of their emotions tied to that property. Likely it took them it was hard for them to purchase initially. And
mhm.
they really just want for you to acknowledge that, "Hey, I know you've run this really well and the best you think you can." That's not, you've done a good job. I wanna, like, carry out that legacy. And so I think that's maybe the biggest thing that we did a lot of times to kind of just help them work out a good deal. I mean, I would say in both cases, it was just very relationship based, just consistently checking in on them and talking to them to build that relationship so that they felt comfortable kind of lending to us or helping us work through a very difficult deal. Because these hotel acquisitions are difficult.
Mhm.
And uh, there's going to be plenty of times where you have to ask something from the seller and hope that they don't ask something in return.
Yeah, that's very true. Because they are difficult to finance, and not a lot of lenders like to finance hotels because it's a riskier asset profile compared to apartment buildings or any of those things. So you have to get very creative with the deal. But how do you get creative? And that was just great advice. So tell me a little bit about how your perspective changed in real estate with this transition from short-term rentals to hotels.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest differences that you have to realize is that for short term rentals, it's hard to really drive, let's call it direct bookings, and really entice people to like see your property over others. There's definitely ways to do it, but with a hotel, and I'll talk specifically more about boutique hotels because that's what I know better. What
Right.
people want is a story, and they want to feel this connection with where they're about to stay. And it's really hard to do that with short-term rentals. Oftentimes people are just looking for a big place and maybe a lot of amenities and stuff like that. But with a hotel, I think there's something to be said about how you route that hotel and the location that it's in, and that really being the appeal of the property, especially if you're going like a roadside boutique hotel, um, and you're this if it's that simple of a property and it's a lot smaller, you're really trying to drive people there not because they're visiting your hotel to visit the location, but because they're visiting the location and they really love or want to stay at your hotel. So that's maybe one of the big differences that we've approached it. Our short-term rentals, they're styled well and everything like that. But for a hotel, you have to take it to the next level and you have to say, who is my ideal customer? What is the story that maybe they want to hear, and how does that resonate inside of them? And so it's really like marketing heavy with these hotels, especially because the commissions you pay to the OTAs tend to be a lot higher than what you'd find on the short-term rental side. So, your average commission take rate might be, 17, 18% from some of these OTAs.
Mm. And so tell me a little bit about the stories that you provide, like how you turn a little ugly roadside hotel that no one really wants to stay in because it kind of looks outdated and, you know, into like something boutique, something in which you experience. How do you create the story behind your hotels?
Yeah, a lot of it is looking at the area and the type of guest that's already coming to the area and saying, okay, what do they want? And then also trying to figure out, okay, what is the demographic of people coming into the area? And then who's like the best demographic that's going to fit what we're building? And so, the Adventure Inn, we were probably less strategic in this way. We didn't change the name of the hotel. It kind of fit for the area because it's a outdoor mecca. But we really tried to gear everything towards like how do we make someone that's coming in that is mountain biking or skiing or all these different things feel like this place was made for them. Hard surfaces that can get dirty, especially on the floors, so like
Mm.
rugs aren't getting messy and they don't have to worry about that. Rags, we have rags in all the rooms so that they can wipe down their bikes or wipe down their gear. We have bike racks in the rooms. And so thinking about like, okay, who is the traveler and what would they appreciate? That's part of it. But I think there's a lot more that could have been done at that property, and that was kind of one of the pivots we made on this most recent property is we brought in a branding agency that helped us refine that even more. And so they've done a phenomenal job. I just had a LinkedIn post, actually, because they just kind of did a public release of our new brand. But you can see the craft and the care that goes into some of the process of inventing this new brand that we did. And so we're really excited about that, really excited to be able to take that and now use that to create some like very, very intentional marketing towards our guest avatar, whether it be on social media or to drive ad campaigns. But I think it'll resonate deeper within people. And that's because we had professionals looking at what do we want to create, and then they helped us kind of create that.
Awesome. Skiing or snowboarding?
I do both.
Do you not like one better?
I used to like snowboarding better, but then I got new skis, so I like skiing better. But
Uh,
if I got a new snowboard, would I like that better? I don't know, maybe.
well, I did both and I like snowboarding much more. I love the name Adventure Inn. Definitely such a smart move to keep it. And the amenity, like I'm your target profile because I would love to go there for personally snowboarding. I don't do mountain bike, but my husband is crazy about mountain biking. I know Colorado is great for both. But I've
Yeah,
done snowboarding in Colorado, really, really cool. Those amenities are awesome. Like, you really think the attention to detail has to be there, like to be able to wipe down your equipment. Things like that is awesome. I love that. And I haven't heard of a hotel like that gathers and it's for adventure people. So I really love that idea. That's awesome. Tell me a little bit about then your
thanks.
brand. What is your brand now? Your new brand.
Oh, the new one? It's
Yeah.
called the Outrider Hotel.
Okay.
So, it's I don't know how to describe it super well, but it's a more elevated experience. Like kind of, we view it as kind of like this modern adventure lodge. So,
Okay.
we don't have like the same type of amenities, such as like we're not appealing to people that are maybe mountain biking, but more kind of crossing into this different demographic. I'll explain maybe our target demographic, and that will help kind of shape things. But we're about 2 hours from Denver, so 2 hours from a major metro. We're really targeting couples, not necessarily families or solo travelers, maybe solo travelers, that are meeting up in one location. Um, our average, um, their average salary tends to be 120 to 200K. They don't have kids. They tend to be adventure seekers or they like to spend time outdoors. And then there's a community aspect to it too. They like to commune with people. And so a lot of our hotel is built around this idea of community. So how do we force community? Fire pits outside where people can sit around and talk about the adventures they've had, long tables inside and out to kind of force people to sit together again to force that community. We have a pool, we'll have a hot tub, we'll have a cold plunge sauna area that will be kind of an upcharge. Um, and so it's elevated, but it's meant to still be rooted in the Manitou Springs, Pikes Peak regional area where people come to go up Pikes Peak, hike around Garden of the Gods and do kind of a handful of other kind of adventure style things.
I love that. A great demographic, I call them dinks, which is
Yeah.
dual income, no kids.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much spot on. That tends to be kind of right where we're aiming for. And what's great about that is before we even set that demographic, or I guess as we set that demographic, I was visiting with Manitou Springs the visitor center, and that's kind of their target demographic too. So we align really well with the local community that is trying to entice more visitors to come into the area as well.
That's very, very smart. And then the financing that you get, I've heard that the best financing that you can get, at least for hotels, are local banks. Have you used that strategy, working with local banks to get financed?
Oh for 2 on that. We
Okay.
We had a lot of we called every local bank in Durango, small town,
Ah,
totally possible to do. There's only probably about 20 of them, and none of them really wanted to lend with us. We had a really tough time finding a lender and ended up using an SBA lender out of California. I'm glad they did. They ended up kind of closing the deal, and they've been great. And then we tried to do the same thing for the Outrider Hotel in Manitou Springs. Talked to tons of local banks throughout Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs, and they couldn't get it done either. So I've heard it's a good strategy. I just have personally never figured it out.
I'm surprised though because you are helping the local community, so I would think that banks would be like, "Yes, please bring in more people." But
Yeah,
everyone is different, so
we're yeah we're looking to
yeah.
refinance both properties this summer. So I'm actually kind of putting together a lot of documents right now, and we're going to try again. We're going to try for local banks. A lot of what we did with both hotels was very rooted in local community. How do we bring local contractors, local craftsmen, and just
Right.
how do we take this and let this be an extension of the local community? And so I think that extends even to financing. And so if we can extend and get financing from a local bank, that's certainly our preference.
Yeah, no, and I love that idea. That just helps the community in general. So, tell me a little bit about what surprised you most about running large scale hospitality projects.
I mean, there's a few different things, but I think maybe the big thing to keep in mind is that hotels are a people-centric business, which we all know, but those that people-centric business means that, like, that extends beyond just the guests coming in. I mean, a lot of our time is spent with our employees and making sure that our employees understand what we're trying to build and can get behind that, and then are passing that on to the guests. And so I think just what surprised me most was that people are really like the most important aspect of this business. And I think why that surprised me is because in the short-term rental industry, especially if you're kind of running your own short-term rentals, it doesn't feel like it's a people-centric business. It feels like you have guests, and then you have this miscellaneous cleaner over here, and then maybe you have a handyman, but it doesn't feel like everything's kind of coming together. At least that's how it's felt for me. And then with the hotels, it was this big switch up where we have like, oh, we have this general manager, and then maybe we have an assistant general manager, and they have to understand what our goals are. And then they're going to pass that down to the housekeepers. And then the housekeepers, might be interacting with guests, or maybe our front desk is interacting with guests. And most of our reviews don't necessarily talk about how great our hotel is. Maybe the rooms are. Now, they might say it's clean, they might say it's good, but you know what they always mention? They always mention how great the front desk was, how the check-in process was. And it's like, oh, we were focusing all of our time and attention towards the rooms when really people love that we have just the best front desk staff. And so I think that's what always has kind of caught me by surprise and really makes me want to put more emphasis every time on just our employees because our employees are really just an extension of the experience.
I love that. And how do you find great employees, great staff? Do you hire them yourselves? It's not
I mean,
easy.
yeah, it's really difficult, especially if you're in small towns. Like Durango is a very small town, and so it's really hard to find good labor. We were fortunate enough to keep a lot of the employees that were previously running the place, and
Nice.
um, they just embraced what we wanted to build and helped us build it. And so we have honestly kept most of our staff. Over half of our staff has been from the previous owner, and he really brought them in. And then, like I said, we've kept them around because they've been so good. But finding good staff, kind of to your point, is difficult. I think you have to realize that it's important to vet them well from the beginning. And if you don't spend time trying to really understand who they are, what they're looking for in a job, you know, just even like their moral compass and kind of what that looks like, you'll pay for it kind of down the road. Whether it be, well, yeah, there's lots of stories. We've had employees get arrested. We've had employees get caught with drugs on property. I mean, just
And
various issues that you hope you never run into, but the fact is, like, you sometimes might, and a lot of times I give people the benefit of the doubt, and I'm glad I do, but it's hard because you can try to be as intentional as possible. You can try to vet them as well as possible, but sometimes you're just going to make mistakes. But learning from those mistakes and pivoting quick, um, you know, slow to hire, quick to fire. And so I truly believe like you just have to spend time with those people as you're going through the hiring process. And I personally do like being involved in that. And so we do. Me and my business partner are heavily involved in kind of the hiring process at this time.
yeah, that's good. And getting to know them is very important. Even me with my tenants, like they would tell me a mush story and I would go for it. I'm like, okay, fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. And then they end up being arrested on the property. And then, they don't pay rent because it's happened to me too. I can't even imagine with employees. So you have to, I guess, have like a strong willed brain too and use logic, but also bring in a little bit of emotion because you do want to help them. You do want to provide a great opportunity for them. So I
Yeah.
understand that. So, what were some growing pains, besides hiring throughout the transition from short-term rental to hotels?
Yeah, definitely hiring, but, cost controls
Oh,
and, like, cash flow management are a lot tougher. So, for example, if you have something that goes wrong in a room, um and you have to upgrade it, or let's just take renovations. Oh, I forgot to account for this one cost. Well, now multiply that by the number of rooms you have. And so if that's $100
uh,
cost, that turns into, a $4,000 cost essentially if you have 40 rooms. And so, I think it just the costs amplify. And so you really have to watch your budget and really understand your budgeting a lot better than you do in short-term rentals. Like I'm meeting with a business partner later today to just walk through like here's our two budgets for the hotels and here's how we allocate things and here's our projections of revenue. Stuff that you have to do for a business but you don't really have to do necessarily for a short-term rental. And so, I think people underscore kind of the business element of running a hotel. And that's where it's different from short-term rentals a lot of times is that it's more like running a business and less like just managing, a home with a couple things going on. Um, so I think, that's one of the things, that comes to mind. And then kind of like I said before, cash flow management. So in our market, we're in a seasonal market. And so we have these really high swings and then we have these really low dips. And so what we know is from our budgets, December, January, February, we're going to lose money those months, a lot of money. And so we have to like manage our cash flow well enough so that we build up those reserves in the summertime and we set that money aside for when we lose money in the wintertime. Overall, on the year, our revenue exceeds expenses and we're doing really well. But if you try to deploy that money elsewhere, even just taking that money and, you know, yeah, putting it towards like amenities or anything like that, it's like, well, I have to have a buffer for those slow seasons. So that's a lot different, I feel like, than short-term rentals can be as well.
And how do you systemize that? I'm assuming you systemize your processes, right, to be able to operate at a higher level, to have employees, to even grow your business.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a lot of it just happens kind of slowly over time.
Mhm,
Um, I mean, I think it's somewhat of a difficult question to answer. I think there's a lot of
mhm,
things that we do to kind of systematize things. Some of it is, your standard putting together standard operating procedures and making sure that everyone's on
okay.
the same page. And then part of it is, how are we analyzing the data of our business and then using that to make actionable decisions? And so that's difficult to do because you might have numbers all over the place. You might have your PMS, and your PMS may not connect to your bookkeeping software, and maybe even if it does, maybe it's still not showing you the reports you want to see. And so trying to systematize the back end side of things too and stay on top of it quickly. So we've hired bookkeepers to kind of make sure that, hey, our books are good by the first week of the month, and now we know, okay, what happened over the last month that we need to correct for this month. And so trying to stay on top of those things, I think, is really key as well. I don't know if that really answered your question, but it's kind of what comes to
No, that
mind.
that that answers more than my question because though that helps listeners understand what to stay on top of, right? And what you should systematize. I said systemize. Obviously, English is not my first language, but what you should systematize when operating a hotel. So that definitely helps. Now, I heard you're a new father. Congratulations. I saw your baby super, super cute. How do you manage and balance being a new father? Because I know that takes time. It is not as easy. And, building your business.
Yeah, thanks. It's difficult. I mean, I think anybody would have to admit that it's not at least somewhat difficult at times to figure out, okay, my daughter has this doctor's appointment. How do I get done everything I need to get done while also like making it to this appointment or kind of supporting my wife? And um, I think a lot of it just comes back to what are my priorities? And you know, when I truly look back on things, it's like, this business is great, but this business could come and go. It's not as important as my family is. And
Mm,
so I'm constantly having to weigh my decisions by my priorities, and my priorities being my faith and my family first. And I think that kind of the next level of that too is if, let's take the second hotel for an example. Before we even jumped into that second hotel, there was so much conversation that went on between my wife and me because we want to be on the same page and we want to be aligned. And so we don't want to take on this huge project if we're not both on the same page. And so those conversations were critical for us to just be like, hey, is this something we want to invest our time in? This might mean maybe a little bit less time with the family for the next 6 months. How do we feel about that? How do I feel about that? And having those conversations to really figure out, okay, yes, this is something we want to pursue. This is a really good opportunity. Or, no, let's take a step back. Let's hold off on this one. Other opportunities will present themselves. And so I just think that that honest and open dialogue is really key, and has been really important as I've become a father and I'm trying to figure out that balance in life myself.
So I love that. So you and your wife are basically a team, right? When speaking about these things, and that's so important. So she's been supported of your real estate journey from the beginning.
Yeah, oh yeah, she is my
Lovely.
greatest supporter. I wouldn't say she's passionate about any of this, but anytime I bring up this idea, she's like, I don't really understand it, but like help me understand it and like let's do it. Like she is like the best supporter out there. And I wouldn't do a lot of the investing I do if I didn't have her support. I think I just would always want to do it with somebody. I want to build for something and with
Yeah.
somebody.
And it's your family too. You're building for your family. At the end of the day, you have hotels, and that's a legacy for your daughter. And you're building a legacy for your whole family, and your wife is too because she's part of that legacy. So I
Yeah.
love to hear it. And how did faith? You mentioned faith, and I'm a very faith-based type of entrepreneur as well. So how did that play into your entire journey? Did you always have faith beforehand, or is that something you've accumulated while going through the struggles of being an entrepreneur? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I grew up in a faith-based home, so it's always kind of been part of me, but I would say that's definitely grown over time. I think just life circumstances kind of cause, you to as you experience life, it forces you to kind of reckon with, what do I believe? And, like, how do
Right.
those beliefs shape me? And so it's definitely been a part of it, and kind of my greatest belief behind it, or kind of how I approach my business in terms of my faith is that the Lord has given me a lot of this, this business, these properties, um, my time and my resources to be a good steward of. And so I want to be the best steward I can be of those resources here on earth. And that way is probably heaviest on me. And that's kind of what I think of as well. And even going back to, like, stewarding of my time for my family, and how do I steward my family well? And so again, kind of weighing those priorities, but that's kind of that's been kind of the lining that I kind of weigh everything against, or kind of how I view things, in terms of my faith is just, is this a righteous investment? Am I moving the right direction? Is this what the Lord is calling me to do? And we bring a lot of prayer into all of it. There was, you know, uh, something that I haven't, shared with a lot of people is that the second hotel we purchased, we backed out about 2 months in, because we were all praying about it. Me, my wife, and our business partner and his wife, and we didn't feel like the Lord was calling us to move on it. And so we backed off. We terminated the contract, and then the deal came back around a few months later, and we ended up getting a way better deal on it. Tons and tons of money off of the property, full seller financing, all that. And I wouldn't say that was because we said no, but it was just like, we felt like we were being obedient at the time and listening to kind of what the Lord was telling us. And so we backed off of it. And that's kind of how we approach a lot of things.
That's amazing. That just shows the power of listening to the Lord and not and understanding, or how is it, working through him and not through your own understanding, because of that you're able to get a better deal. So he knows the plans that he has for you, and that's a great example of that. Maybe you may feel or think that maybe he's taking away from you, but no, he's doing that to give you something better. So it's just a great example of that, and that's why I wanted to touch
Yeah.
up on a little bit on your faith side, and that was just a great testimonial in itself. Tell me, what would you tell someone who wants to get into the hotel space, who comes from, the single family rental space? What advice would you give them?
Um, I would say, like, overall, like, there's this misconception that you need short-term rental experience maybe to get into, like, hotels and kind of this hospitality space, and I don't think that's true. I think what's more important is that you understand your underwriting. And then I would say the other thing that has been huge for us is just having, like, a partner that complements our weaknesses. And so I'm not good at certain things, and my business partner picks up the slack, to kind of make up for some of those things. And so, uh, maybe my biggest piece of advice would just be surround yourself with people, whether it be a business partner or other people, that understand the space that can help you validate your assumptions and your underwriting. And then a lot of it is just taking action, just actually going out and doing it. Taking action is small steps in the beginning of underwriting deals, talking to lenders, things like that. But it turns into, hey, I'm going to call this broker about this deal. Okay, now that I called the broker, like, like, just taking the steps forward. It felt very slow in the beginning and scary. Everything felt scary in the beginning, but now that we've done it once and now twice, you just grow in confidence. You're like, I don't know everything. You'll never know everything, but at least now I have the confidence to keep moving forward.
Love it. How do you It is scary. I'm trying it right now and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I just sent out an LOI. I'm freaking out. What if they accept? What am I supposed to do next?" How do you
Yeah.
overcome that fear?
You just keep moving. I mean, that fear doesn't go away. I mean, like, every time I feel like, I'm no professional, but I've done this twice to buy a hotel, and every time it feels clunky and things feel out of order, and there's some sleepless nights in there. But if you have strong conviction about your numbers and about the deal and what you're doing, and you feel confident, then you just got to keep taking those steps forward and kind of just overcome that fear.
Love it, and you're gonna do it a lot more. Twice is double than what I've done, so that's amazing. That's a big that's a big clap for you. So last 2 questions. One, what is your morning routine?
It's changed since having a baby. It's not as
Of
good as it used to
course.
be. I'm an early riser, so I like to get up early. If I can squeeze in a workout, I'm gonna squeeze in a workout. And then I like to have some personal quiet time. And then, we usually get my daughter up. We'll spend some time with her, kind of feeding her, getting her ready for the day. And then I'll go off to work. That's usually what it looks like.
Okay, that's fair. And you wake up, is your daughter an early riser like you?
She used to sleep in till like 7:30. Now she gets up at like 6:30, so she kind of interrupts my morning, but we'll
That's
see.
okay. It's
Yeah.
it's mornings full of love, so that's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
And what book do you recommend to any listeners out there?
Do you have a type or just in general?
In general.
Oh man. Um, I have really been getting into Alex Hormozy's books, 100 Million Leads and 100 Million Offers. I think there's a lot of truth in it, or a lot of application, I should say. And I, I,
Mhm.
I have been personally just listening to them, reading them, writing things down, and then like I have kind of trying to train a GPT to help me kind of like build that out and apply it to my own business.
Oh,
So
smart.
that's like top of mind for me right now. So that's maybe what I'd recommend to people, but I don't know if I'd say it's the best or my favorite.
That's such a great strategy, though. I've been doing that with like building a story brand. That's one of the books that I'm reading right now. And then you apply those tactics like, hey, for example, what is the target demographic for your customer and how do I market to them? And then you write that down in GPT and it'll tell you
Yeah.
exactly based on your business. So I love that strategy. Should definitely use it in your business. And then last piece of advice that you have someone in their hustle to holdings journey. They're in the hustle stage and they're just really trying to build.
Yeah, I goes back to something I said before, but surround yourself with other people that are hustling.
Love it.
And don't forget to like enjoy life and have fun. It's easy to get like consumed by the hustle, but go take a vacation, go find something fun to do. If you burn out, you'll be no good. So you might as well just kind of try to keep life fun.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Jordan, for your time, for your amazing advice. We're very inspired by you. I know the other listeners will be as well. And I can't wait to see what's next. Are you acquiring new properties? Like, what's your next step right now? What are you focusing on 2026?
The main focus is getting the Outrider Hotel live by May 1st. So
Nice.
that's kind of like the biggest thing. My wife and I are expecting our second here in about a month. So we
What?
have that going on.
Girl or
And
boy?
then this one's a boy. So we have a girl, and now this one will be a boy.
Oh,
Yeah. So those are maybe the main two focuses. We're not looking to buy anything else. We're looking at opportunities to potentially manage another property in our area just for some efficiency and scale, but we'll see if that pans out.
that's awesome. Congratulations on your new boy. I can tell you the girl's gonna toughen him up just because she's a firstborn. Firstborns are always tough. I can
That's
speak
right.
from experience. But congratulations on, your projects, your baby boy, and I wish you the best. We're gonna stay connected and I can't wait to see what's next for you, Jordan.
Sounds good. Thank you.